Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donohue and Sonia Mansfield talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donohue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Here's Hans from Die Hard. Ha, ha, ha. I have been perfecting that since 1987, just so y'all know. We are the
slow clap.
Right, slow clap for the Margot. We are the show that talks about creeps from the past to the present. Today is a little bit different. What we're going to do is we're going to replay an episode that we did a couple of years ago about Charles Dickens. It's just that time of the year. It's starting to look a lot like Christmas. So
Creepmas.
We like to call it
look
Creepmas.
a lot like Creepmas.
Charles Dickens was a total fucking creep. We will get to that after we do this beginning part. I did want to talk about something that's happening in the news, but first let me just tell you, you can find us on Facebook. We have a basic Facebook page, but that's where most people go just to complain about our language. Yes, we use salty language in this program, if you haven't noticed so far.
Fuck yeah, we do.
We have a private Facebook group, and that's where we're the most interactive with people. You go to facebook.com, type in What a Creep Podcast, ask to join. Once you get in there, and you have to answer 3 little questions, and then just not be an asshole. Just hang out there, and we talk about creeps there, all kinds of things, and non-creeps.
It's a really good group. We work really hard to keep it that way. So don't show up and act like a prick.
Yes.
And you can stay. That's the rule. Just don't be a dick.
Just don't be a dick. We are on Twitter at CreepPod for now because somebody had What a Creep on Twitter for over 10 years and never used it.
Great.
And we're on Instagram at What a Creep Podcast, and we have an old-timey email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, just send us your address via the email. We will drop them in the mail for you wherever you are on the planet of Earth. We'll put her on Santa's sleigh as he's going around delivering Christmas presents to good girls and boys.
Slay, Santa, slay.
He slays, y'all.
He slays.
First, before we get to that, I just want to talk about something that's happening in the news, and we talked about this person before. We sometimes have a quartet of creeps. We will pick 4 creeps under a certain topic, and we did comedians. We've done it a couple of times because it turns out there's a lot of fucking
so
creeps
many.
in comedy. Jesus,
isn't that hilarious?
Christ on a hockey stick. Yes.
It's hilarious how many stand-up comedians are creeps. So funny. Why are so many comedians creeps?
Why do they like this?
Have you ever noticed that so many stand-up comedians are creeps?
Did you ever get food on an airplane? It stinks.
And then you're sitting next to some stand-up comedian who turns out to be a creep.
Who shows you his dick when you didn't want to see it. Louis C.K., what?
What?
Yeah.
I thought I was sitting in the no dick section.
Speaking of dicks, Chris D'Elia, we've mentioned him on this show. He's a popular comedian. Look, comedy is subjective. What one person finds funny, another person might not. I think it's one of those art forms that doesn't age very well. There's things I joked about like 10 years ago I wouldn't do now.
For sure.
And
for sure, no, this is true about me.
Right. And on Netflix, they have a comedy special every week. I can't say that I like every single one that they put out, but there's some I really do like. We all have different tastes. What we don't like is when a comic is abusing women and when they're abusing kids. And guess what?
Correct.
If you're under 18, you're a kid. And it's not okay to groom them. It's not okay to reach out to them and flirt with them until they hit 18, and then you can hit that. Now,
gross.
It's super
so
fucking
gross and illegal.
Very illegal. We talked about Chris D'Elia. He was credibly accused, and sued for this.
Yes.
There's been evidence presented. He goes away for a minute, and then he comes back on the road, and a lot of his fans don't seem to fucking care. So comedian Kyle Anderson does care, was upset about this because you all get painted with the same brush. If it's just like all, dudes in comedy just get away with this shit, like Bill Cosby got away with shit for years. By the way, we talked about Bill Clinton being a creep and other Democrats, so don't think it's any aisle or just men.
Yes. We've done a lot of episodes about women too.
But we have. Kyle Anderson talked to several women who say that they have been abused by Chris D'Elia. The YouTube clip, you can find it pretty much on Twitter or anywhere. But it's talking about how he's grooming several women there and how he keeps them in. It's called coercive control and keeping people under your control, under your power. He's using his fame. I know a lot of you are going to say, "Who the fuck is this guy?" But in stand-up comedy, by the way, that he's been doing for the last 2 years since the first accusations first came out, still goes on the road, still plays in Hollywood, and people like Patton Oswalt still perform with them. You know, maybe, you can't control what the venue does, but you can talk, you're powerful enough that you could do something about this.
Yeah, exactly. You can choose who you perform with.
Right.
You can control that.
Yeah. And Alice Hamilton is a comedian that we both adore. She's truly funny as shit.
She is so funny.
She's so funny. And she also hates creeps. And she's constantly talking about comedy creeps. She's the person that, first talked about him she had a comedy special on YouTube that released in the last year. It was the funniest thing I've seen in a really long time.
So good.
And she calls his shit out. And she's been waiting for this. The guy got married and had a kid in the meantime. And it's you need to see the special. Like I said,
but it hasn't slowed him down.
No.
It hasn't slowed him down, by the way. Like he did it. It's like a PR thing. It's like, no, I'm totally fine now. And look, I'm a changed man. I'm married. I've got a kid now, but he's still doing it.
And here's the thing, Sonia, I didn't realize this, but one of his former friends said that he's one of those people like Gene Simmons. Never drank, never had a drug. And if there's anybody that I think needs to smoke a doob once in a while, it would be Gene Simmons. He's a little...
Right.
It's like,
a little intense.
Ugh, he's a little intense. So he can't blame this on an alcohol problem. He can't blame this on a drug. And by the way, we don't shame people for having addiction issues on this show. We both have encountered it in our lives with family and friends. But that's not an excuse he can give.
No.
And this has only been a couple of years that this has happened. He has other friends that are doing shitty stuff. And there's other comedians that have been accused of things. And then they come back and like, oh, I'm better now. And they're not. I don't know why they go into this line of work to harass women. I don't get it. But for some reason, they're protected. So we wanted to put this clip out there just to know what you're buying. When you're going to see somebody at a show, you should know who's up there. I also worry about people like, obviously women in the audience, but the women who work there at these clubs and the shit they put up with there anyway. But then they have this shit on top of this guy being a known creep.
Yeah, they're not in a safe work environment for sure. I mean, maybe some of the women who work around Chris D'Elia are safe because, they have to be over 20. They're probably over 21 to be working at a comedy club in the first place. But it's just fucked up. And honestly, it's just lazy. It's lazy too. It's, there are people who still support people like him or still support like Dave Chappelle or Louis C.K. or it's like, I don't want to change what I like or I don't want to admit that I'm wrong or just you can like what you want to like. I guess that's fine. But also just know who it is that you're liking and maybe why you like it. Think about that. Like, there's old Louis C.K. stuff that's super fucking funny. I get it. If you see him now, you're supporting like some really fucked up shit he's done and has not like really apologized for or atoned for or try to make right. And Chris D'Elia is just still doing the same fucking shit.
Right.
Like he hasn't learned shit. And it's like, dude is not that funny. He's not worth it.
No. On top of that, he's not funny. But once again, like I said, it's subjective.
I don't even mean to compare him to like a Dave Chappelle or Lucy because he's not that funny.
No,
he's not funny.
No, that's the thing. Like that drives us crazy. But look, it is a thing. There's people I find funny that you would probably be like, ugh, what are you talking about? But anyway, not to belabor it, but we do try to keep up to date on this. So this creep, we have the YouTube clip is in there. Check it out for yourselves. After this, we're going to be playing our Charles Dickens episode. But in the meantime, let's take a turn for a non-creep that I'd like to talk about. We co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies. And this past weekend, I learned that actress Valerie Perrine, she has Parkinson's disease. And she's 79 years old, and she needs help with her medical care, her dental care, and just people coming to her home to look after her. And it's embarrassing in America that this is how we treat our elderly. And this is, people go broke when they get sick. And
it's awful.
It's just, I can't even. And Valerie Perrine, she was in Superman, the first Superman movie. She played Lenny Bruce's wife, Bunny, and Lenny. She was in Slaughterhouse-5. She was in Made to Order. This is a movie I really love with Ali Sheedy.
That's on our list.
That's on our list. She's done a lot of great work, a lot of fun work, and I just adore her. And she was selling a lot of her old Superman stuff to help pay for her bills. And this is why I found it. So there's a GoFundMe set up. We have the link in our show notes, and I'll post the link in our Facebook group and on Twitter and stuff and retweet it. But we're going to be talking about Can't Stop the Music, which is a movie that stars the Village People, Caitlyn Jenner, Steve Guttenberg, and was directed by Nancy Walker, who played Rhoda's mother. Rhoda.
I'm really looking forward to this, by the way.
So the reason that we're doing this is because one of our friends, Binksy, who lives in Australia, we did Xanadu a couple of years ago, and she wrote to us, said, please cover Can't Stop the Music one day. There's Channel 9 in Australia. They play this every year on New Year's. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I watched this last night. This is camp on like 1,000%. It's
can't wait. I'm watching it tonight.
You can honestly smell the cocaine through the screen. Like how many drugs people were on when they made this thing.
Nice.
It's New York City and San Francisco, by the way, Sonia. So it's like both of us. It's disco music. They have a different cop playing the lead than they had because he quit before the movie was made because he was married to Felicia Rashad. It's a whole thing, y'all. We'll be talking about it in the show, but please support Valerie Perrine. And she's at the Val Perrine on Twitter. She's got some bills to pay, and she's entertained us all in many ways. So that's why I really wanted to do this for her. And then after that, I think we're going to cover Ruthless People because we've been promising that forever. So that is your watching assignments for Dorking Out. Also White Lotus, because we're going to have to talk about that. We're
going to talk about that in the what else we've been watching section of that episode because we need to talk about White Lotus.
Right. Okay, y'all. So thank you once again. Be safe. We'll put out an episode next week, but be safe. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Let's talk about that creep, Charles Dickens.
Creep. Exactly.
My sources for this episode are the London Telegraph, Bates College alumni interview, BBC, The Guardian, The Vintage News, The Smithsonian, The Herald News, and the book Charles Dickens, A Life by Claire Tomalin. Charles Dickens is one of the successful authors of the 19th century who attracted a rock star-like following around the world for his dramatic readings. He is considered as close to Father Christmas as any man has been, and was a champion of working-class people and liberal causes. His work influenced writers for several generations, including Wilkie Collins, Jules Verne, George Orwell, Roald Dahl, and Jonathan Nolan, who's the screenwriter for The Dark Knight, among many, many other things. He was also a massive creep to several important women in his life, which is what we will focus on today. Charles John Huffam Dickens was born to John and Elizabeth Dickens on February 7th, 1812. He was the second of 8 children. His father worked for the Navy Pay Office, and the family had to move quite a few times for his job. When Charles was young, he received something of a private education, but his parents were spending way beyond their means because they had 8 goddamn kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in June 1822, John Dickens' debts were so great that he was sent to a debtor's prison along with his wife and their youngest children.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they would probably love to still have something like that.
Yes.
That's insane. A debtor's prison.
A debtor's prison, and the wife and the kids were there too. So Charles was 12, and he went to live with a family friend. And in order to help his family pay off their debts and for his room and board, he had to put in 10-hour work shifts at a shoe blackening factory. And his job was he would paste labels on pots, and then he'd have to cover them with twine and write really pretty on them so they can sell these at apothecary stores. It was really detailed, boring, and tiring. The factory was located on a busy street, and the boys would work behind a window. So the people on the street would gather and look in like they were at a zoo.
Oh, this sounds so terrible.
And this completely added to his misery. When his father was let out of prison, Charles's mother did not immediately support him coming home and getting an education. She wanted him to continue working at the factory to help support the family. Charles was sore about this and blames his problems with women on her lack of affection for him. And as we've said before, if it's not one thing, it's your mother.
Yes.
Dickens would carry his experience at the factory with him throughout his life and said his teenage years were the worst because he felt unloved, undereducated, and had little joy.
Welcome to being a teenager.
Exactly.
By the way.
I felt the same way. I was just in Pennsylvania, that's all. His first adult job was at a law firm, and he spent most of his time entertaining people by imitating everyone from the clients to the staff. And people loved him. All of a sudden, he kind of just blossomed, grew out of his shell, or whatever you want to say. He went to the theater every single day for 3 years, was obsessed with the theater, and learned the tricks to entertaining an audience. At 20, he started writing for several publications as a journalist. His first pieces, I'm hungry. His first pieces were sketches accompanied by stories about exotic street people. He was gaining his confidence and making friends when he met 19-year-old Catherine Hogarth, whose father was a music critic. Some of his work at this time, I've never read any of these. Sketches by Boz. Boz was his nickname. The Pickwick Papers and Oliver Twist. I've seen the musical Oliver. I've never read the book.
I've actually never even seen the musical.
I just know about, please, sir, may I have some more?
That's all I know. That's all I know about Oliver, and we do it all the time here in the house. Please, sir, can I have some more?
My mother hated Oliver Reed for some reason. Like, she just thought he was a total dick. And so whenever I see him in a movie, I'm like, ugh. I'm not watching that shit. Anyway.
Maybe I'll watch it someday. I don't know. Doubtful.
1968 and was nominated for Best Film. I mean, it was like at a time when the Academy Awards really sucked and just went for audience and family audiences. Yeah. So Oliver Twist is the first Victorian novel with a child protagonist. April of 1836, Catherine and Charles are married. He's 24, she is 20. Catherine would give birth to the first of their 10 children in January 1837.
What? 10?
10.
He learned nothing?
She had
nothing.
Oh, we'll get to that.
From the 8 kids? Oh.
We will get to that.
10.
Okay. She also had 2 miscarriages. I mean, this woman was pregnant all the time.
Oh, I didn't really love being pregnant, so that sounds like misery to me. But some people fucking love being
some
pregnant.
women. I have a friend who loves, like I said, just had her 5th one, and it was just like she wants another. Okay.
No.
So the oldest is a boy named Charlie, and they rent a home in Bloomsbury, London. I hope I said that right. By the way, we're American, and all of our English fans out there, if I wreck any names for things, please accept my apology now. Catherine's 17-year-old sister Mary moves in to help them out. Charles becomes very close to her and was distraught when just a year later she fainted and died in his arms. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's tragic. She most likely had some kind of heart failure.
Jesus.
Yeah. Charles said at her funeral that when he dies, he wanted to be buried next to her so their dust could intermingle.
That's not suspicious.
No.
Mm-mm.
So when there's
Totally normal thing to say
reaction.
about your sister-in-law.
teenage sister-in-law, by the way.
Yeah.
When their second child was born, she was a girl. He insisted that she be named Mary. He also kept a locket of Mary's hair his whole life and wore her ring for the rest of his life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sure his wife super loved that.
We'll get to that. He was so famous and successful that Queen Victoria herself read his work. But as he was making money, his publishers were bought out, which meant he didn't have the rights to his own work. And this would be a theme going forward. And it used to happen that they would just buy each other out and the author would be screwed. And then they would just publish the books all over the world and the authors would never get a penny. They didn't have that copyright. So he realized pretty soon on this is messed up and he wanted to try to fix it. Some of his weird behavior to women began soon after his marriage, or is what she noticed. For example, I hope I say these things correctly. He takes a vacation to Broadstairs, and that's where he met the fiance of his lawyer's best friend. I know it's a little bit of a trick to get around that. Her name was Eleanor Picken, and he was flirting with her openly everywhere they went. His wife and her fiance tried to grin and bear it, but it was obvious to everyone. One day they were walking as a group when Charles grabbed Eleanor and ran to the sea with her. He then dragged her into the water and said, "Let's drown in the sad sea waves."
Oh my God. I would fucking run from this dude. I'd be like, get the fuck away from me.
She says, "Nah, I don't think so."
Nah.
And so Charles is embarrassed, and he and his family then travel to Scotland and then to America. And he has mixed ideas about America. This is in 1842, by the way. He's shocked to find out about slavery that takes place in much of our country and tries to keep away from the South, which is good that he recognizes that. He completely ignored it happening in British colonies around the world and never wrote about it. But he did write about it in America. By the way, he was greeted as a huge star. And people would gather at theaters outside, on the street, on the sidewalks, to try to listen in when he gave a performance. And apparently he was a fantastic speaker and could do multiple voices. He was very tall and thin, had a ton of energy, and people were just totally into his shit. Like, he was a big star when he came to America. This does not happen to authors now.
No.
Not even David Sedaris, though they should. When he was visiting New York City, he and American writer Washington Irving tried to convince Congress to uphold an international copyright so their work could not be pirated. The press resented them for this and told them they're just not happy enough for being famous and they should just shut up and not. Yeah. So this would take a while for this to happen.
I can't even imagine you write something, you put your heart and soul into it, it's your work, and that people can just take it.
Yeah.
And you don't own it. And there's nothing you could do about it.
They could change they could change it too.
Yeah.
They could write a happier ending if they don't like what you wrote. Like it's that kind of shit.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I would be pissed too.
They have every right. They are absolutely right about this. A year later, he writes A Christmas Carol, which helped reignite enthusiasm for the holiday here, in the U.S. and in the U.K. And then we go into his middle years, and he writes, I never read any of these, David Copperfield, Little Dorrit, I've seen all the movies, Great Expectations, A Tale of Two Cities, and he continues to fight for liberal causes and meets with progressives throughout Europe to help England become more modern. So there's stuff I like about him.
Yes.
He's fighting the good fight.
But he's still a creep.
He's such a creep. Okay.
He's still shitty to the women in his life.
Well, get ready for this.
Oh, boy.
He is known for his philanthropy, give readings to hospitals when they needed funds. He did this many, many, many times and raised a lot of money. He also felt a connection to working class people, including sex workers at the time. He was friendly with many of them. When asked to set up a home for fallen women, he helped raise money for that. And he personally managed it for 10 years. He had strict ideas on what women could learn, but it was more like domestic household chores. But he helped over 100 women become, quote unquote, good wives. Yeah.
I like the idea of it.
Yeah, I like the idea too, but he is still a fucking creep, and we'll find out why. So going back to his childhood, when Charles was young and the family was living in Kent, England, he went for a walk with his father and came upon a home so beautiful that he said to his father, one day I'm going to be rich enough to own it. And that place was called Gad's Hill. And he did indeed buy it and put his family there. It's still in the family for years. It's now a day school, and it's beautiful. You could see it for yourself online. The last part of his life, he was mainly doing speaking tours around the world, and he made a fortune doing it. But his health was declining, and he knew he wouldn't live to be an old man. In 1860, he began the annual habit on his birthday every year of destroying all of his personal letters and correspondences, everything except business. Why? We will get to that. In 1865, he was involved in a train crash. He was riding with actress Ellen Ternan, we'll get to her soon, and her mother. They were going from Paris to London. It was 7 train cars. A bridge fell out, and the first cars just plunged off the tracks.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So he was on the 7th car that didn't fall, and he didn't get that hurt. So he went around and gave brandy to people and talked to people and helped calm them down. And he was apparently very brave and helped these people. He then also had terrible PTSD and never wanted to ride a train again. I wouldn't either. You would never find me on a train after that.
Totally normal.
Yeah. In 1870, he's 58 years old and barely has the strength to walk, much less have the stamina for speaking gigs. His last one is on May 2nd, reading the Pickwick Papers and a Christmas Carol to the Royal Academy with the Prince and Princess of Wales in attendance. No, not Diane Charles. That was a long time ago.
Yes.
A month later, he had a stroke and died in his bed at Gad's Hill. He wanted to be buried in an inexpensive, unostentatious, and private manner. Instead, he was laid to rest in the Poets' Corner at Westminster Abbey in London. Now, one of the reasons he wanted to be more discreet, have more discreet burial, is he was living with his mistress for the last dozen years. And for Victorian England, this would not do.
I thought he wanted to be buried with Mary. He forgot about her, huh?
He's over her. Now, I want to talk about Catherine Dickens, his wife, and what she put up with during her marriage to Charles Dickens. Charles was always flirting with younger women and getting her consistently pregnant. He was also always complaining that she didn't have his vitality and that she was fat.
Fuck this guy.
He described her in a letter to a friend in 1842 as, she is as near being a donkey as one of her sex can be.
What an asshole.
At night, he'd like to venture the streets, getting to know the brothels and pubs in the sketchier parts of town. In 1856, one of his closest friends married a young, rich widow who had no interest in children. And Charles had FOMO, fear of missing out. He wrote in his diary, the old days, shall I ever frame of mine back from when I was younger? Get the frame of mine back that when I was younger. He's just complaining. He's got FOMO.
Yeah, also, fuck off. You stop impregnating your wife then, asshole. 10 kids, asshole.
He started to complain to his male friends about his wife and her eating habits. When they traveled to Paris to try some fine dining, he wrote to one pal, Mrs. Dickens nearly killed herself with her eating. And then in great detail in the same letter described the sex workers walking around Paris.
Gross.
It should be noted that most of his friends really liked Catherine. They liked her very much and did not appreciate her being denigrated in any way. But he was a big star, so most of them just kind of ignored his insults. They didn't egg him on. They just kind of looked the other way.
Right.
But he told a friend at this time, poor Catherine and I are not made for each other, and there is no help for it. In 1857, Dickens and the writer Wilkie Collins. Wilkie wrote a book called The Woman in White, and it's considered a classic ghost story, and people talk about it all the time. I could never get a fucking word through it. I always found it incredibly
really?
boring. Yes. It's considered one of the greatest ghost stories ever written. I could never fucking deal with it. Anyway, Wilkie and Dickens write a play, and it's called The Frozen Deep. And Dickens falls in love with one of the actresses hired. Her name is Ellen Ternan. He is 45. She is 18. He would call her Nellie. Nellie is at first unsure about the relationship, but after she meets Wilkie Collins and his mistress and sees how nicely they live, she's in.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. He tells Catherine he wants a separation. And he does this by actually dividing their bedroom. He takes a bookcase and moves it into the center of the bedroom, and he lives on one side and she lives on the other.
Honestly, Catherine was probably fucking relieved, right? Like, God, he can't knock me up through this bookcase.
He refused to have any contact with her in the room, and he brought women to the room.
Oh, no. No.
And she was hoping to change his mind. But
oh, Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine, but nope. He was intent. He wanted to be with Nellie, and that was it.
Dude, he's super rich. Why don't you buy another place?
Well, so this is what he does.
Okay.
So eventually he got her to agree to a separation. He would stay in Gad's Hill with 9 of their 10 children, and her sister Georgina would stay in Gad's Hill to raise the kids. Catherine would take one child and live in another home and just start a new life without her husband. When this happened, Catherine and Charles never saw each other again.
How did they decide that she would only take one of the kids?
It's really complicated. She dealt with I'll talk about it a little bit more, but I think she just had a lot of postpartum issues.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You know, she had problems with headaches. She had problems with a lot of things, and I think she found it overwhelming.
Yeah.
And her not pregnant sisters would just show up who were younger, and they could just handle all these kids. And by the way, Charles, I should say, he liked his kids very much. He especially doted on his daughters. Maybe that's weird, but he liked being a father.
Yeah.
He was tough on
I
the
should
boys.
I hope so with 10 kids.
You've got to wonder.
I feel really bad for Catherine because pregnancy really fucks with your head.
Yeah.
And your body.
Yeah.
And to do it over and over like that. And so 10 kids and 2 miscarriages on top of that. That's a lot.
Can you imagine giving birth back then?
It's awful.
Yeah,
I feel so bad for her.
Ellen destroyed all of his letters to her, Ellen Nellie, whatever you want to call her. And they kept their romance under wraps for years. But eventually his older kids figured out what was going on. And daughter Katie even said that her father and Ellen had a son together who died in infancy.
Oh.
Since he cannot get a divorce because he can't prove adultery, Charles is so frustrated, he decides the best course is to have his wife committed. In 1858, Charles Dickens approached Thomas Harrington Duke, who ran an asylum, asked him to commit his wife for being insane. And so this way he can have a clean separation from Catherine and live with Ellen Nellie openly.
This is bullshit.
He heard about this from a friend of his who did the same thing. Who got to send his wife away to be insane for a few weeks at an asylum, brought her home and divorced her. So because Charles was denied of this, he decided instead to leak to the press that Catherine was insane and she was making his life hell. He said she was an incompetent mother. She was an alcoholic. She was not, by the way. And said she may have some mental disorder. And she was most likely, I would just say, depressed for decades. I mean, this is 20 years of marriage. You're constantly giving birth. He cast her as mentally deficient. His close friends and protective media kept up the ruse to justify the affair. So he was protected. And
that is awful.
And that became the story. He married a woman. She had a bunch of kids. She went crazy. She wouldn't divorce him. So he had to figure out a way to get away from her.
That fucking asshole.
Yeah. So what many people do not know about Catherine is that when she was younger, she was not only beautiful and rather wealthy, which I think attracted him to her in the first place. But she was a writer and an actress. She was an excellent cook, and she loved to travel. She was a great companion to them. They were very happy the first few years of their marriage, you should say. When she and Charles toured America, you would find her on stage with him as well. They were, like I said, a happy marriage at first, but her constantly being pregnant, 10 kids, 2 miscarriages, took their toll on her energy, and this bothered him. He also blamed her for constantly needing money to take care of the kids.
Oh my God, fuck this guy. Ugh.
Ever since Dickens died, he was known as a legendary writer, that he was prolific, a man who championed the working class, and the man who saved Christmas. Catherine was always treated as a frumpy nag. The way Catherine found out about the affair, by the way, was when he bought a bracelet for Ellen for her birthday, and he sent it to his house versus Ellen's house. So she thinks she's getting a present from her husband, Catherine, and it's really for his girlfriend.
Oh, that's like from Love Actually.
Yep, and which we'll talk about in a minute.
That.
Another one of her great personal achievements that nobody talks about was that she wrote her own cookbook. And it was in 1851, and she used the name Lady Maria Clutterbuck.
That's an unfortunate last name. She should have come up with something better.
I think so. But it was a cook. They called it a cookery book, and it was what shall we have for dinner? And it's basically how to serve food for a great deal of people. And it's, you could serve like 18 people. And it was like, it's England. It's like potatoes and mac and cheese and shit like that. A lot of people started creating the rumor that Charles wrote the book, that she never wrote the book because she's mentally incompetent. There's no way she could have done it. All this crap. It's still out. There's still several editions, but it was just a way to try to erase her more. People just didn't want to give her any credit.
I kind of want to buy that book now.
I know, don't you? I want to make the mac and cheese. Also in 1851, the same year she produced this book, she wrote the book and published it. She suffered a nervous collapse, it was called, because of the death of her daughter, Dora, who is 8 months old.
Oh my gosh, that's so sad. I can't imagine. That's heartbreaking.
It's horrible. So Charles's children basically had to choose sides and would get the cold shoulder from him if he felt they were spending too much time visiting their mother. There was a great deal of emphasis by his family and the publishing community to keep his reputation intact. If anyone spoke out about his affairs or his treatment of women, they were kind of banished. He was Father Christmas, let's just say. They wanted to keep that image going. So they, like I said, they never saw each other again once they were separated. She moved to a new home. They had very little correspondence, but she remained really attached to him and very loyal to him right up until the time she died. And she died of cancer in 1879. As she was dying, she gave a collection of letters to their daughter, Kate, that I mentioned before. And these letters were love letters that Dickens had written to her mother when they were younger. And she said to Kate, "Please give these to the British Museum. That way the world may know Charles loved me once." Doesn't that break your heart?
Oh my God, that is so sad. Oh, that hurts me.
Catherine Dickens was buried in Highgate Cemetery in London with her infant daughter, Dora. That is our creep today, Charles Dickens.
Good job, Margot.
Thank you.
Justice for Catherine.
I mean it, really.
Seriously, fuck that guy. What a huge asshole.
He apparently wasn't nice to Ellen Nellie, but I couldn't find too much about it. Supposedly that was the rumor as well. When he died, she was with him until his death, and then she married somebody 12 years younger and lied about her age.
Oh.
Yeah, and she had they ran a school together, and she was very happy. But she burned all of her correspondence with him, so there might have been some weirdness with her as well. But that's the big story there for you.
It just makes my blood boil when these stories of men who marry and then they domesticate these. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but they these women are become baby machines, and they're so busy taking care of all the kids and running their house, and then the men punish them for it and move on. It happened in the Picasso episode we talked about too. Like Picasso did this kind of shit too, and it just makes me so angry. It's fucking bullshit. Fuck that guy.
Look, and enjoy A Christmas Carol. I do. I mean, it's okay to enjoy the art, the written word. I mean, he's created. He helped make Christmas what it is today, which is great. He just was really shitty to some women, and that wasn't okay.
Yeah, no, it's not going to change my mind. I'll still watch Muppet Christmas Carol.
The best one.
And, over at Dorking Out every holiday season, Margot and I are going to talk about a different version of Christmas Carol. So, I mean, it's still something that I'm going to watch, but now I know there's a little check mark next to his name in my head. Do you want to hear about someone who's not a creep?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is someone who also wrote a popular holiday story. I'm going to talk about Dr. Seuss, also known as Theodore Seuss Geisel. He was born March 2nd, 1904 in Springfield, Massachusetts. He's a children's book author. I'm going to assume that most people know who Dr. Seuss is, but he also did political cartoons. He was an illustrator, a poet, an animator, and filmmaker. He wrote more than 60 books. I think, he did How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which I love. Everybody loves. Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham, Horton Hears a Who, Oh, the Places You'll Go, which is also probably known as the book everyone seems to get when they graduate from high school. Did you get one of those?
College, but yeah.
College, there you go. Calvin got one when he graduated from preschool from one of the teachers, and I was like, that's so sweet. It's so funny. It's just something that everybody gets. When you graduate from something, you'll get a copy of Oh, the Places You'll Go. And they are some of the most popular children's books of all time. They have sold over 600 million copies. They've been translated into 20 languages. He died in 1991 at 87 because of fucking cancer. Fucking cancer. He won 2 Academy Awards, 2 Emmy Awards, a Peabody Award, the Laura Ingalls Wilder Medal, the Inkpot Award, and the Pulitzer Prize. And he has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which I think is pretty cool. And I picked him not just because his books are like colorful and fun, but they helped millions of kids learn to read, and they have great messages that don't really, I don't know, when you're a kid, you probably don't really think about it. And then years later, it kind of hits you over the head what those stories were really about. So like the Lorax is really about like environmentalism, or the Sneetch is about racism, or, the Grinch is about like materialism, and Horton Hears a Who, which is the one I find so interesting, is really about it's about being anti-isolationism. Did I pronounce that right? When you isolationists, like something that like our gross president right now is trying to make America be like, where we just don't give a shit about other countries. And the reason I'm so fascinated by Horton Hears a Who, as World War II began, Dr. Seuss, he started doing political cartoons. He did over 400 different cartoons in 2 years as an editorial cartoonist for a New York City daily newspaper called PM. Never heard of it. And they're pretty left leaning. It was all about denouncing Hitler and Mussolini. And like I said, very, very critical of isolationists. He also worked in the animation and film department in the United States Army, where he wrote, produced, and animated many productions, both live action and animated. And here's where things get a little creepy, but I want to call out that there is a road to redemption here, which we talk about a lot in the group and on different episodes. So Dr. Seuss, also known as Geisel, supported the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. But he took that road to redemption. He super regretted that stance. And then after the war, he wrote a book. He wrote Horton Hears a Who, which is an allegory for American post-war occupation of Japan. If you've read the book or you've seen the cartoon and you see it through those eyes, it's a really amazing story. Calvin has watched it a few times. After he watches Grinch, we watch Horton Hears a Who, the short one, not the I think there's like a longer one, but I'm talking about the little short one. Anyway, he also wrote and directed a documentary called Design for Death. And it's all about like telling people the Japanese were not inherently evil. And he stresses the importance of helping countries that are at the mercy of authoritarian governments. And that's what won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature in 1947.
Very cool.
Yeah, I thought that was very cool. Like, once again, that road to redemption, like admitting, hey, I was wrong, and like made amends and did things to like try to fix the damage he's done, I think is something cool. It's not cool that he thought that in the first place,
No.
but it's cool that he like, it's like, yeah, it seems like nowadays, the worst thing you can possibly do is admit you were wrong.
Right.
And I think that we should start celebrating people almost like not celebrating, but just like, yeah, it's okay to admit you were wrong and make amends. And I think he did that. I do think it's important to point out that Dr. Seuss wasn't like a real doctor, but he did then receive an honorary doctorate from Dartmouth. So he is a real doctor now. Which is a topic of much discussion here in America right now about who's allowed to call themselves a doctor. He had no children of his own. He said once, "You have them, I'll entertain them."
Which that's I'm with you, buddy.
And yeah, and he's been married twice. His first wife, I believe her name was Helen. She got really sick. I think she actually killed herself because she was so sick. It's so sad.
Yeah.
And then he remarried, and he had that wife, Audrey, until he passed away, like I said, September 1991. He was 87, and he was cremated, and he had his ashes scattered into the Pacific Ocean.
Nice.
Yeah, and then a couple years after his death, the University of California, San Diego renamed their library the Geisel Library in honor of him and his wife, Audrey, this is the second wife, because they had contributed all kinds of money to that library to improve literacy in the community. I think he's a good, not a creep.
No, he's an excellent one.
And I love How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Not the Jim Carrey movie. I think that one's ugly and
weird.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I know people super love it. I don't love it, but the original like one from the 60s and the new one that came out in 2018, super great. So that's our Not a Creep. Dr. Seuss.
Good job, Sonia.
Thank you, my friend.
If you like the sound of our voices, we co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies. We went back and forth about what we're going to be covering next. I kind of browbeat Sonia a little bit to get this one in because I really
not at all
talk about it. What are we covering?
We are going to talk about Love Actually, and I am very, very excited to talk about Love Actually because one of the first times ever I heard Margot was on another podcast where she was talking about Love Actually. And I was like yelling at the podcast, like, yes, that chick gets it. She fucking gets it. Yeah. Like, and I wanted to jump into that conversation so bad. So you didn't really have to twist my arm very hard to talk about Love Actually, because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this movie. I think it's going to be really, really fun to talk about.
So we'll be back soon with a new episode, you guys. Have a great holiday season. Stay safe. We're very sorry if you're stuck indoors. So are we. We'll get through this together. Wash your hands, practice social distancing. Follow us on all the things for social media at CreepPod on Twitter, Facebook group, our email once again, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And we love it when you use the Annie Potts gift from Ghostbusters. We got one. Once again, also, we're always looking for suggestions for non-creeps. Please send them our way. And Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter and Instagram. Where can people find you, Margot?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick, mostly for Twitter and Instagram, and my blog is brooklynfitchick.com. And Sonia, by the way, we forgot to mention about our website.
Oh my gosh, it's whatacreeppodcast.com, and you can find everything you ever wanted to know about this podcast, and it includes links to our Patreon page and our merch store. You can get amazing t-shirts and masks and journals and tote bags. And I'm going to be uploading our new our new adorable logo with the updated colors very soon. And I have some ideas for 2021 logos too. So there'll be new designs soon. Yeah, new designs soon.
All right, you guys. So in the meantime, once again, practice social distancing, wash your hands. Don't be a creep.
Creep.
Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.